I think in the future, as leaders, we're going to be hiring people not just for the skills they have, but for the AI they've trained to do things the way they do. So you'll come along to a new job as a marketing person for a big brand or a small restaurant chain or a franchise owner, and you'll bring with you a bunch of AI that you've trained to think about marketing the way you do and do it the way you do.
Welcome to the Prosper Brief, a show dedicated to elevating the future of the food service and hospitality industry. I am your host, James Rogers, COO of the Prosper Company, and today we're speaking with Andrew M. Davis, best-selling author, keynote speaker, and marketing expert. He's built and sold a digital marketing agency, produced for NBC, and even worked for the Muppets. His books, Brandscaping and Town Inc., have reshaped how businesses think about partnerships, audience development, engagement, and brand building. Now he teaches business leaders how to grow their companies, transform their cities, and leave a lasting legacy. Get ready for a conversation packed with energy, insights, and big ideas.
What becomes possible when your strategic planning is amplified by a partner that thinks like you, that acts like you, even creates like you? I'm Andrew Davis, and we created what I call digital doppelgangers. It's not just artificial intelligence, it's actually what I call intelligence augmentation. Intelligence augmentation doesn't replace you. Your digital doppelganger isn't here to take over your job. It's here to enhance what you do. In Dallas, this October, I'll reveal the 4-step process to build your digital doppelganger. On October 23rd, I'll break down the complete framework in my keynote session. You're gonna see exactly how this works and why it matters for your future in food service. Then on the next day, on October 24th, we're gonna roll up our actual sleeves. And in our think tank session, you're actually going to build your own digital doppelganger right there in the room. Bring your laptop, and in just 45 minutes, you'll have a strategic collaborator that thinks like you, that reasons like you, that works like you, and understands what you're trying to accomplish. I'm Andrew Davis, and welcome not to the age of AI, but the age of IA. Welcome to Intelligence Augmentation.
All right, welcome, Drew.
Hey,
so glad to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. It's such a great show.
Where are you at right now in the world? Are you in
I
Florida?
am at home. Yeah, I'm at home at my studio in Florida, in Boca Raton, Florida, just north of Miami. And it's a nice, windy, cool day. It's a perfect day to be inside doing this.
Yeah, awesome. And you're going to SFO, you said, I think? Or where are you headed?
Yeah, I'm headed to San Francisco. I'm speaking actually at an event, like a real estate event next week. That should be lots of fun. Actually, we're talking about AI, so it'll be really exciting and fun.
Are you getting a lot of questions on AI these days, or how's that going?
Yeah, I am. Like, it's my most booked speech right now. Is all about AI and kind of like how to strategically think about the future of AI and how to get over the disruption and really navigate, the complexities that this kind of new revolution might bring upon us.
That's truly it, right? It's a revolution, do you think, or is
I
that what you
do.
would call it?
Yeah, I mean, I would call it a revolution. Like, I spent a bunch of time going back in history. I'm a history buff, so I just spent all this time trying to figure out like what happens when a new technology arrives on the scene, and what kind of disruption does it look like, and then how do you know if this is a fad or a trend or actually a revolution? And it turns out that in every single case, there's like an emotional roller coaster we go on that's pretty consistent. It doesn't matter if you're talking about the printing press or the TV or GPS. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of technological revolution. There's this like emotional roller coaster we all feel when it comes around. And then there's one pivotal moment and one single thing that transforms everything. And that's what determines whether it's a trend or a fad or an actual revolution. And I think I have a theory on what that might be, that one thing, which we can talk about. It'll be fun.
Well, let's set that up and let's leave that as a cliffhanger for later. But I'll make sure we come back to that because I know I want to talk about AI, and that's what the billing on this podcast will say. But before we do, you've written a couple of books, and it's been a little bit. And I'll have to say, I just wanted to set you up that one of them is called Brandscaping. We had you speak years ago at an event we were working on, and I was reading through it, and I was looking through the table of contents, and I have to say, you're a little bit of a prophet. This was written in like 2012, right?
Yeah.
And not to blow smoke, but chapter titles that kind of caught my eye: content sells stuff,
Hmm.
the downfall of advertising, death to the inauthentic celebrity, the insatiable demand for content. You're not the center of the web universe, and everyone has an audience.
Yep.
And there's so many points I could go on, but the big thing was that in that book you're basically saying every brand is a media company, and how are you going to do that? And how
That's
are you
right.
going to partner with other people? And it's a fascinating book. I had a chance to kind of re-thumb through that, and appreciate. I think I was like, man, I probably. But I guess my question to you is, to start things off, like you're talking about the AI in the future, where we get to pivotal moment. Going back a little bit, what surprised you? Having written that 10 years ago, plus, and now where we're at with soccer moms selling, Etsy products, an influencer model. What surprised you now that maybe you didn't see
Well,
when you
okay.
wrote those
So,
books?
well, when I wrote that book, never could have predicted that the generation of content would become so easy. I think that surprised me constantly. And every time, even a new technology arrived and the camera phones got better, since 2012, almost every year, your phone on your camera got better and better. I just never imagined it would be this easy to create video content. I knew it would get easier. I didn't know it would get this easier. So the content creation process, I've constantly underestimated. And I think most of us have. And back to AI, it's one of the things that AI does really, really well, and it creates content on a whim. I never would have predicted that you could, create a song using an AI tool that sounded so good it could be a jingle on an ad tomorrow with just a little prompt. Like, that is amazing to me. So that's the first thing. I couldn't have predicted that in 2012 for sure. I think the other thing that I don't think I think I just underestimated. I knew it would happen maybe, but I wasn't really sure. Is that the scale of influence would evolve in very rapidly. Like, I think there are tiers of influencers out there now, ranging from celebrity, partnerships and influencers, which we see a lot of, all the way down to micro, and then they even call them nano influencers, where it's only just a few hundred or a few thousand very influential followers that actually do create trends. I don't think I ever saw that happening, that you could actually leverage such a small micro audience, that you could have a big impact. And I've seen brands like Red Pants, Red Pants, if you've ever heard of them, they used very few nano influencers to transform their business, and that stuff has surprised me. And then maybe the third thing that really surprised me since 2012, is how rapidly the social landscape has evolved. Meaning, platforms seem to come and go at a much faster pace than I ever predicted. And so, yeah, I think, I wrote a whole chapter about the downfall of advertising, and we know it's evolving. I think I would have predicted it would be way over already. And I would have predicted that Twitter would still dominate the landscape, and I never would have seen TikTok rising so fast. I think that's pretty amazing to see.
Yeah, it's I remember when I read your book first, and I was hearing whispers of content marketing and all this. It was kind of a thing, but it wasn't a thing, and some people knew what it meant or what it could be, and now it seems like everybody's trying to. It's almost like, I guess my question: do you think it's saturated? Do you think we're doing too much? Like, is there a pendulum swinging back now to some sort of normal, or is it just going to go forever?
I think the amount of content being generated now, is greater than it ever has been. I think the difference is we're starting to realize that quality over quantity really does make an impact, and the kind of generic content that doesn't have a personality behind it, that doesn't have a real brand voice or a voice and perspective that's unique, I think that's more important than ever. So it's easier to create content than ever before, but it's created you call it a pendulum swing. Maybe that's what it is. But I think it's created a deeper desire for a more meaningful connection with not just the content itself, but the people behind the content. And I think that makes it much more authentic. And I think it also does help cut through the clutter on the
meaning.
brand side.
I think meaning is a great word for it. People are
Yeah.
always searching for meaning, right?
Yeah,
And we want
absolutely.
our lives to be meaningful. We want to be a part of things that are meaningful, right? So,
I think that's
well,
a great word.
let's
Meaning and belonging maybe is another one,
belonging. Yeah. People want to feel like they're a part of something, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also you don't want to be a part of something you don't agree with, right?
That's
And there's a
right.
lot of, you have
Yeah,
enough options you can choose, right? So optionality is a
absolutely.
big deal.
Authenticity,
Well,
trust, and transparency are huge, I think, key pillars of what make great content.
that's a good point. And that you said that in your book. That was, 15 years ago. You were calling that.
Yeah.
And it's true.
Uh,
It's very true. Uh, let's talk about the restaurant ecosystem for a little bit in terms of, content and, I mean, you had an idea in your book that you opened with about Finding Nemo and how it perpetuated this mass run on clownfish that actually threatened clownfish populations and all that stuff, right? And there's this idea that these big rock cultural moments, whether it's a movie. By the way, my kids were watching that movie this morning, which I was laughing about. I was like, of course, but these cultural moments, these Finding Nemo impact type situations, like, is there anything in the restaurant industry that you see that's like happened like that, where like that was a Nemo moment for the restaurant
oh,
industry?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of them. Like I think honestly, restaurants and food and beverage in general are really good at two things: partnerships and cultural momentum. And like Barbie is a really interesting and easy example, right? It was a cultural phenomenon, and everyone from like local restaurants all the way up to national brands started, actually leveraging that momentum to their benefit. So local restaurants here, even in South Florida, started having like pink lemonade on their menu, right? It didn't say like Barbie pink lemonade necessarily, but all of a sudden they're leaning in to where the culture is going, given the moment that's happening. And then there were official brand partnerships, but this brings up really something really important about these cultural moments. It doesn't have to be an official partnership, right? Like you can when it comes to cultural momentum, you can actually just tag along on something that's happening right now. You just got to be fast. You have to be authentic, and you have to be kind of transparent about it in the way that you kind of market that that relationship. So Barbie is one. Let's see. Stanley, Stanley the tumblers, the big tumblers.
Yeah, I got some of
That's
those at home. Yeah.
yeah, we do too. That's obviously a huge momentum builder. But Starbucks, sold out in instants. Like as soon as they announced that they had their Stanley tumblers in the store, they were gone. And again, that's a more official relationship. But it's taking something that started online. The Stanley story as an online kind of phenomenon, I find fascinating. But and it started with teachers and nurses, and all of a sudden everybody's got to have them, and there's multiple colors, and the brand, like that cultural phenomenon, Starbucks realized could be really, really powerful to align with the right people who already had access to their audience, and all of a sudden increase sales. At the end of the day, I think any of these kind of cultural momentum moments have to drive revenue, and they have to be audience focused, not just kind of a gimmick. But if we go way back, brands like McDonald's have always partnered on their Happy Meals, and they've taken every cultural moment that's authentic to their brand and the families they're trying to attract, and created a meal that makes that partnership come alive. So at the real product end of the food and beverage and restaurant industry, you've got this kind of stuff happening. And it's not new, but the opportunities to do it are even bigger. Mr. Beast released his, I don't know if you saw the Mr. Beast Ghost Kitchen burger joint. Um, but that's again another kind of new opportunity that never existed before, and it's leveraging the power of his brand and what Mr. Beast has built, and the ability to expand into the restaurant industry and capitalize on that cultural momentum. So, yeah, I honestly think the restaurant industry has been really good at this. Maybe we've just never formalized it or noticed how impactful it can be. So that there's even user-generated versions of this, where you've seen and leveraged user-generated content to actually build something really smart. Like well, McDonald's did it with Grimace, and the Grimace. I don't know if you participated or went and got your Grimace shake. Yeah, exactly. So for Grimace's birthday, for those of you that don't know, they had like a really fun social promotion, and I think I'm pretty sure from a social standpoint, it's McDonald's most successful online content play that they've ever had, and it definitely drove revenue. In-store sales went up. People went to the store just for the shake, and they're obviously not just buying the shake. At the end of the day, they're buying a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, so I think the restaurant industry is really good actually at picking up on these cultural themes. And there's kind of viral ones. I made a list. There's viral ones. There's like official brand tie-ins. There's social media ones. There's even location-based ones, that are pretty effective and powerful. So
Yeah, and there's so many unique things happening, and I think we're all going to be really shocked where things go. I mean, even with the advent of what are they, the Web3 stuff, and there's this whole idea in the future where somebody's playing a video game at home and they can go into a restaurant in the game and order Jack in the Box and they can get delivered to their house, like through DoorDash mechanism or whatever, right? Like there's so many different ways that I can imagine where that then plays into some sort of co-marketing. You're co-marketing with Modern Warfare or whatever, right? To get in. It's incredible, right? What's possible and really, yeah.
yeah, there have already been some video game and um, food and beverage brand partnerships that have been very effective, where they've actually partnered in a deeper way, either on the menu side, like at the venue itself, or in the game in a deeper way. And I'm not sure. Like the bottom line is a lot of this has felt experimental at the beginning. Like I don't know what happened when the Happy Meal came out. I don't know if people are like, well, it's an experiment. Let's see if it works, and it stuck, right? But I think we live in an era um, where so many marketers are risk averse, and the truth is, marketing is only works if it feels risky. Like taking these bigger leaps and partnering maybe with brands that you didn't think about, or capitalizing on trends you're not sure are going to be trends. Because you have to be early, you have to be willing to take those risks. Like there were tons of restaurants on the Taylor Swift Eras tour, right? Which is again another big cultural phenomenon, that were location based. Taylor's coming to Miami, and all of a sudden restaurants would have Taylor Swift price fixed dinners. They would have Taylor Swift menu items that were available. That's not a national play. That's just in our local market. How can I actually leverage what's happening around me to benefit the consumer, tie into the cultural trend, and actually build the business? And at first that might feel risky, but this stuff works. And so the more risky you're willing to be, the bigger the potential payoff. Because as soon as everybody's doing it, it's not really going to be that effective. If you can go everywhere and get a Taylor's era price fixed dinner, well, it's a commodity again. It's the ones that are brave enough to try something new that really see the benefit.
Yeah, and you got to align that with the personas and the types of people you're bringing into your restaurant, right? Like, you got to
Absolutely.
know your audience, and you really got to think through it that lens. But and it comes down to what story are you telling, and who are
Yep.
you telling it to, and are you? I love that you say that in the book too. It's like you're not talking to this nameless mass of people. You're talking to an individual, and what does that individual want? Well, how can you surprise them? Kind of we were talking about earlier about how can you surprise people.
Yeah.
So put yourself for a second in the role of you just got hired by a moderately sized restaurant chain, if you will, And you're talking about story technique. You're 90 days in, and you're talking about what you want to do. It's like, and aside like the Eras tour, kind of that's an easy. Like, she's in town. Let's get creative. I get
Yeah.
that. But like day to day, rubber meets the road. What are your like top three things you're going to try to do in a not a semi-national chain, like multi-state?
Yeah.
How would you go about trying to hit a lot of different diverse consumers with something that's more macro successful?
Yeah. Okay. So I think I love the kind of thought exercise. I think the first thing I do is truly try to identify and understand the diversity of the audience. Right. I think one of the big opportunities we have today is to get, I call it fractal focused. It means that there's people way down in your audience that you probably haven't actually noticed or considered before, that carry a lot of weight because they're passionate about something, and those people tell a lot of people about what they're passionate about. There's a story in Brandscaping actually about Tractor Supply and how they did this with people who wanted to raise backyard poultry, chickens in their backyard, And this was an audience that Tractor Supply had never considered. Tractor Supply, usually just sells to the kind of suburban farmer or urban farmer, right? This is someone who like gardens on the weekends. It's that kind of place. And they just like most restaurant brands, and I would do this if I just walked in on day one. They're like, our consumer is, and it's like 18 to 45, and they go out on all of a sudden you've just this big homogenous group. And I tried to identify three fractals that no one else that I would consider a competitor has even considered moving into. And I tried to identify, so that's task number one. Task number two is I would try to identify the influencers in those communities. I kind of call this top-down promotion, but I would try to find out who are the people that are running the Reddit subreddit about this kind of thing. Who are the people that are posting on this socially? They don't need to have 1 million followers or 100 million followers. I just want them to be the ones that people turn to and say, wow, what are they buying or thinking or eating or doing? And I'd reach out to them and ask them what they've already wanted to do. This is the third thing. I'd reach out and say, hey, look, we love what you're doing. We think what you're pursuing is fantastic. You're so passionate about it. Would you be interested in, trying to expand what you're doing? Have you always thought about doing something? Tell me your hopes and dreams for what you're doing around this one passion point. And honestly, those conversations will open up a long list of opportunities for you to partner on content, to join audiences, join forces, and create something really special that is unique. And what's amazing about this, I know if you're listening to this, you're thinking, this guy is crazy. What's amazing about this is if you think of a tree, the trunk of the tree might be that 18 to 49-year-old audience that you're trying to get to come into your restaurants all around the Midwest, right? Okay, that's great. But what happens is when you go up those branches and you find a really small little branch that you think is passionate and excited and does love your brand, this because you've seen it. Those people actually influence everybody down those branches. And if you pick the right 3 or 4 branches, all of a sudden you see the trunk expanding because it seems like there's a movement around it that started authentically from the right place instead of from the top, the trunk up. Instead of you saying, here's my big national campaign, you start from the other direction, and eventually it leads to, this is my big national campaign. So I think that's my approach. Does that sound crazy?
No, it sounds great. And I'll ask this question. You talked about the fractals and you talked about the branches, and you're trying to isolate these growth pockets, really, right? And put
Yeah,
it, and also at the same time, you're trying to capture this energy of this marketing you really couldn't buy, right?
that's right.
Somebody's got trust with an audience that's in that fractal set, and you're trying to leverage their trust, right? Um, Now, and really, they're kind of in some ways kind of saying, I'm going to bet my trust that this is actually worth your time, and you're not going to not want it. So there's an equation there. It has to all
Uh,
stack, right?
abs-
Now, have you heard of Keith Lee?
No. Who is Keith Lee?
Oh, man, you got to check out Keith Lee. And
Okay,
for the
okay.
audience, he's a guy in Vegas that he went from, just this guy, basically he just goes to a restaurant and he tries their food. Usually he goes to like small mom and pop. He wants to help. That's his whole thing. He wants to help the small mom and pop.
Okay.
Restaurants struggling. They got great food. They don't know how to market as well. And he goes in and he tries their food, and it's kind of like Barstool with the pizza.
Okay.
He's like, oh, that's the best chicken wing I've ever had in my life. He's like, that's a 9 out of 10. He gives a rating and all that.
Okay.
Anyways, but people love it, and it's very, like love people like watching this guy eat food, and he's amazing. He's very authentic. He's got all this story behind him. He's trustworthy. He doesn't, if it's bad, he says it's bad. But the Keith Lee effect is now a thing.
Yeah.
And people, like, the next day, there's a line out the door at that restaurant. And, that problem is that he's not somebody that really wants to bite in with, as an influencer, with the corporation that might want. But I guess that's kind of the character, right? And everybody should check out
Yeah.
Keith Lee because he's hilarious. But my
Yeah.
point is how do you get into that mode of, okay, that person's willing, they're able, they have the right audience, and how do you vet them? Like, how does that, like,
Yeah.
walk us through that process of talking with them and
Yeah.
really making sure they're going to help you, and they're willing to help you, and they're not going to hurt you.
Well, okay, let's just let me do that. The easiest way to kind of build a relationship with one of these people who has access to an audience is actually to really truly understand what their long-term vision is. I'll give you an example that's kind of restaurant adjacent. So Texas Monthly Magazine for a long time was kind of struggling with their publishing business, right? And what's really interesting about Texas Monthly is that they for 25 years, they've had a really great kind of food section of their magazine. They go all over Texas and they review stuff, and they had a food and beverage editor type of person. And really high quality, beautiful photography, everything. Well, all of a sudden they started to realize that their traffic was declining, right? And they realized that a lot of people were just interested in Texas barbecue. And anytime they published an article about Texas barbecue, they'd see this spike, right? And then if they were writing about fancy French food in downtown Houston, no one seemed to care. So they're like, wow, where is everybody going for all this barbecue stuff? They found a guy who was a lawyer by day, and on the weekends, he would drive all over Texas. I mean, hours, sometimes 10 hours, to get some barbecue, to review it in a nicely written article. He's no journalist, and people loved it, right? He's kind of like the Keith Lee of the barbecue world. Well, Texas Monthly called him up, and this is the conversation they had. They essentially said, hey, look, you're doing law stuff by day. Do you love being a lawyer? And he was like, I hate it. I wish I could have a full-time job just eating barbecue. And they were like, really? Like, you want a full-time job just eating barbecue? He's like, yeah, but my blog makes like $18 a month in random ads from Google, and I don't know how to make this work. And they said, well, look, we're in the publishing business. We know how to make this work. What if we hire you as the first ever in the world barbecue editor, full-time barbecue editor of a major publication? We buy your platform, and you work for us. Name the salary, name the price for your thing, and let's just keep writing about great barbecue. Do you have other visions? And he said, yeah, I've always wanted to do like an amazing barbecue event. They said, let's do it. Like, what do you need to make? So for me, it's all about the brand partnership, where you're actually trying to understand what are the dreams and hopes of that person. What is their vision? And does it align with your brand's dreams and hopes and vision? And when it does, the potential just skyrockets. If I take a real brandscape that came out of the restaurant world, like a very simple one, Taco Bell knew that Doritos was a phenomenon. The movie about Doritos came out. I don't know if you ever watched the Flamin' Hot. It's good. It's good. Anyway, it was kind of a cultural phenomenon, and they knew that their audience loves Doritos, right? Like there's a partnership immediately there. And when they formalized the partnership and really said, like, what does Doritos want out of one? What does Taco Bell need out of one? All of a sudden, skyrocketed their sales, and they came up with their Doritos Tacos mashup, which Tacos Locos or Doritos Locos or whatever, Crazy Doritos, I can't remember what it was called. But like that's at the brand level, making a partnership in the very same way. The conversations have to be open and honest, and they have to be focused on long-term success and value for both parties. And if there's a misalignment anywhere, you either have to hash it out or you have to move on.
Yeah. So it's not just a numbers game. It's like we're going to be real smart about whose trust we leverage, because you're kind of
Absolutely.
exposing yourself to some risk too. Like, what if that, like, and I won't say it, but there's been some brands that
Yes.
have leveraged. We won't go down that road, but and it's a down, it's a bummer, right? When they're
Yeah.
sitting there, oh, that's rough. So you got to be careful too. Well, that's amazing. So
Yeah.
you're reaching out, you're building this trust, you're getting these, and how does that? I know it's kind of like getting into the weeds a little bit with it, but I'm just curious, how does that process work? In terms of the maturation of the relationship, as
Mm.
you're leading this, guiding this person, if you're in that role and you're like, hey, I don't want, but like, here, we want to give you some this points, and we have this goal, and how
Yeah.
do you maintain that alignment? I'm really curious, like, how does that, because I mean, it's always nice in day one, but then 2 years in,
Yeah.
what's that look like, right?
Well, okay. So I think the major problem with any partnership is resentment on either side of the party, right? It's the only emotion you have to navigate when you're working with, I'm going to put it in air quotes, but a celebrity, right? These people and these brands think of themselves as having their own audience. They're very protective of it. They also think they're a pretty big deal in their own little world, which they are. It's why we're interested in working with them. And on the other side, you have the same kind of affection and concerns about the brand you've built. You're concerned that this alignment might not work out. You're concerned that it might be bad press. You're concerned that they might not like the next dish you come out with or the next product you release. And you if they don't, like, what does that mean? How do you guide them, right? Well, so the resentment factor is a real one, and there's only one way to truly deal with it. You have to upfront invite anyone who's resenting the relationship to bring it up as soon as they feel the resentment, because when resentment lingers in these relationships, it's the death nail. They'll hate what you send them every time, just because they're like, I don't get paid enough for this, or this is not being worth my time, or now I'm feeling overworked, or now I'm feeling like they're pushing me in a direction I don't want to go. But you have to be open and honest about those things, and you have to kind of level set at the beginning. Hey, look, if you don't like our food, the reason we want to work with you is because your audience trusts you, and we value that over the fact that you might have to say one day, I don't like the chicken wings. And instead of saying that alone, we'd love for you to tell us first you don't like the chicken wings, and the second thing we'd like to do is partner on that. Okay, I'd rather have you help me make some better chicken wings so that everybody likes them. And let's call it a deeper partnership. Product innovation and product development are very much consumer focused exercises. And if you're not spending the time to talk to the people who are influencing the people who buy your product about what they're hearing, and then adjusting the product. I mean, Domino's did this with their pizza, right? They did it in a broad scale way. They were very transparent about it. I think they did a tremendous job in being honest about the fact that their pizza is not good. And then they fixed the pizza by really going to consumers directly. What I'm saying and suggesting is that partnering with those people that are in those fractals and really do care about what you're doing and wish it was better are the best people to partner with to build the next generation of your product, because they will bring the audience if they're tied to it. Hey, I helped develop these chicken wings. They sent me chicken wings. I was like, these are terrible. And guess what? They're now, they're now the new version. They're Prosper chicken wings, right? Like, all of a sudden you have a much deeper relationship, and they believe in the product.
Mm.
And,
And they
and
felt appreciated and heard, right? They feel like
exactly.
they're a part of the solution, right?
That's right. So I think these partnerships, these will define brands in the future. It's no different than what we've seen in celebrity marketing and branding. I've seen lots and lots of larger scale influencers like Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek came out with a backpack, right? Like, he travels a lot. I travel a lot. He's a speaker. I'm a speaker. He's very much an influencer on me. And when he came out with the backpack, I was like, holy smokes, I travel all the time, and I have a collection of backpacks that I can't stand for small, dumb reasons. Like, when I tell my wife I don't use that backpack anymore because I don't like this zipper, she's like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no, seriously, I don't. So when he came out with one, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to get one of these. Now, here's the thing. There was an influencer below him who I trust even more, who bought the backpack, reviewed it, and said they didn't like it, right? For a bunch of reasons that I agreed with. And so all of a sudden, I never bought Simon Sinek's backpack because of that second review. But the key piece, what I'm trying to illustrate is, When you try start at the top, you end up creating more friction instead of more buy-in. And when you start at the bottom, the liability is low, right? These small little fractals, if it doesn't work out, that's okay. It doesn't affect your giant marketing. I've never seen it all of a sudden become a huge issue. But when you start with a big brand name that you're partnering with and then going the other way, you end up with problems. And I've actually done this myself. When we were working in the marketing agency, we partnered with some celebrities for some of the brands we worked with. And I won't name any names. One of them was in the restaurant industry. And from the first appearance on the Today Show, we all realized we made a massive mistake. And now we were locked in for a year. And it was really disappointing, disheartening. There's a lot of resentment. And we should have started smaller to go big.
Yeah, that's wise. And I think what I'm hearing you say is, and this goes to all relationships, right? Marriage or hiring somebody, you have to have alignment in terms of vision and I know what you want, and I know what you want now. I know what you want next year because I'm asking, I care, and there's an open two-way dialogue. And so I would think that's a big unlock for a lot of people. Or if I was doing that, is how do I make sure that there's an open dialogue with this influencer that they can say, hey, honestly, I think your sandwich is horrible,
Yeah.
and then, like, to your point, how amazing it is that, and actually, depending on what you want to do with it, you could even say like something funny, like, "Hey, this guy thought our sandwich was horrible, so
Exactly.
we worked with them on it, and here's what we did, and you should try it." And I think that builds even more trust and authenticity. And somebody recently said to me, brands can get kind of stuffy. They can look
Yes.
like they're so good, and maybe that's a way of humbling ourselves a little bit, and bringing ourselves down, popping our own head bubble, and realizing, yeah, well, maybe we don't have the recipe that everybody loves, and we should be honest, and here's our integrity and why you can trust us, because we're willing to deal with that. And that's what Domino's, you mentioned, had done, and more power to them, right? Good for you on
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So in balancing that risk equation, just, I don't want to, we can kind of move on in a bit here, but you're kind of suggesting that maybe don't go jump to celebrity endorsements, until you really know how to play the game. And there's so many people out there, soccer moms who are going to Chick-fil-A with their kids every day, and you could build a network in every location you serve, like every municipality of that person, and just leverage them in a micro way and in a micro environment to drive a macro effect. Is that what you're saying? Or would you recommend?
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. I think here's what happens when you dissect these little communities. All of a sudden, you'll realize that they'll point you to the celebrity that will have the biggest impact, to the influencer above them on the scale. And that's actually what happened with the Stanley tumblers. I don't know if the restaurant industry is really familiar with the story. Are you familiar with it? Like how
Not
it
the whole
evolved?
story. Like, I don't know their will it blend story, but I do know that my wife was like, "Hey, I watched this influencer, and these are the coolest things, and I can get whatever color. And if I buy this color, it's like $80." I'm like,
$80.
$80? And she's like, "It's I can flip it." I'm like, "What?" Like, whatever. It's your
It's so
money.
true.
Go for it.
Well, let me tell you the backstory then, because it's the backstory
Please.
that I think that makes this really powerful, and it illustrates your point entirely, right? Like, essentially, like the way you end up with a partnership with Starbucks from Stanley is not calling Starbucks and saying, "Hey, we have a bunch of mugs we don't know how to get rid of in different colors. Do you guys want to partner?" They're going to say, like, "No. What does that bring us? Like, now we have more inventory on our shelves. Don't need it." Instead, what happened truly was that there were three women from I think they're from South Carolina, who love these Stanley cups, okay? And they bought all the Stanley cups they could find and were giving them out to their friends. And they blogged about it on their little mom blogs. And everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, where can I get these?" And they realized they were sold out everywhere. So these three women got together, they called Stanley. And Stanley said, "Hey, I'm really sorry, we're discontinuing the Stanley mug." And they were like, "Why are you doing that?" And they're like, "It's our worst selling product. no one wants this thing. And they're like, okay, well, what's your minimum order if we wanted to have a custom order? And they're like 5,000. So these women hung up and they talked about it and they raised they put in their own cash and said, I think we could sell 5,000 of these to the friends that we have and then the blog people that follow us. They don't have big audiences, okay? And they called back and said, hey, we'd love to order that 5,000. They ordered the 5,000 in just like one color. And immediately they put on their blog when they arrived, we have them, we'd love to ship them out, let us know. They shipped them out in 24 hours. They were all gone. It took them like 2 weeks to fulfill all these orders. And they called back and said, hey, we want to order 10,000. And the person, thank goodness, the salesperson on the phone was like, wait, you already sold 5,000? Would you guys like to come and meet? And so they flew to Stanley and they said, look, here's what we're doing. And they said, this is fantastic. Like, we'll reduce the per cup cost. If this works out, like, we'd love to partner with you in a deeper way. Like, what could we do? And they're like, well, people want these kinds of colors. And they're like, okay, well, let's do a bunch of different colors. Like, we don't usually do that for a 10,000 order. And that's how I got started. And these three women were teachers and nurses. And those were the people who were reading their blog. So that's the fractal, right? Teachers were like, I don't have time to go to the bathroom and fill up a small little water cup between classes. I need something big, 40 ounces that I can just drink for 3 classes in a row before I can take a break. The nurses said the same thing. The value proposition was, this thing fits in a cup holder. I love the colors. And guess what? It's like, it's part of my brand. That's how it got started. Then at the end of the entire story, you end up with the celebrity partnership with Starbucks, right? It paved the way, because all along Stanley was like, who is the audience that loves us? Oh, it's teachers and nurses. Let's lean into that. Oh, it's expanded from teachers to nurses to now other people. Let's embrace that. Oh, do they go to Starbucks all the time? I didn't know that. Most of our audience who buys these cups are Starbucks customers. Well, let's introduce our audience to Starbucks in a deep and meaningful way. That's how great partnerships work. They start small with the right audience and then grow.
Yeah, proof of concept produces that result. They couldn't have sold that to Starbucks. Yeah, but that's interesting. And it's all about trust. It's all about leveraging somebody else's brand, right? Which is the whole book you had. I want to transition, if it's okay, over to Town Inc. real quick, and we'll get to the AI piece in a little bit, and we've kind of talked about it, but real quick, you wrote a book, Town Inc. It was all about how if you're in a small town and it's not growing, and the barber pays the grocer and the grocer pays the banker and the bank, and there's like eventually taxes eat up the dollars in the small town and it goes away, right? Which is to your point. And your point was that, why don't you do something, and why don't you stake a claim, and why don't you say, our town is going to be about this, and we're not only going to invest in the infrastructure needed for that, we're also going to invest in the education that supports it later. And it's a big story arc. I don't want to give it all away, but your book is basically, stake a claim and say, you know what, Hollywood's the entertainment capital of the world, Nashville's the music city capital of the world, New York is the finance capital of the world. And then you went into some other, what was the place in Ohio that's like the orthopedic?
Warsaw, Indiana. Warsaw, Indiana. Orthopedic manufacturing capital of the world.
And if you want to make it in orthopedics, you got to go to Indiana. So
that's true.
That was because somebody staked a claim and said, this is what we're going to be about, right? And they empowered a vision, really, right? So, going back to the restaurant industry with that, and I thought that was just an incredible book. I loved everything about it, right? Such a unique idea, but you see it everywhere now. Once you open up, you're like, oh yeah, Disneyland did that, right?
Yeah,
now,
that's right.
It's everywhere, right? But, so I guess in terms of, a little cheeky question, can there be a restaurant capital of the world?
Okay, I've been thinking about this, and actually, when I was researching the book, I think it's Sarasota, Florida, is I call it the restaurant innovation capital of America, because more chain restaurants have come out of like Sarasota than anywhere else. And if you broaden that, you could just say Florida is the restaurant innovation capital of America, because I mean, Burger King. Like, there's a long list of restaurants that we would never have experienced if they didn't start in Florida. And I don't know why that is. I'm sure there's something we could use to back up that claim. Is there a restaurant capital of the world? I don't know. But here's the thing about these claims. It actually doesn't really matter if the stats back it up. What matters is, can you really lean into it, right? And can you leverage it to build your marketing? Like San Diego has claimed for years that they are the craft beer capital of America. Now, I looked at the numbers for this, and it doesn't bear fruit. Like, they are not. Like, I don't care how you slice the numbers. They don't produce more craft beer than anywhere else in America. But they've used this marketing and branding to tremendous effect to attract men to come for their bachelor parties and stuff, and do beer tours and like all sorts of fun stuff in San Diego. It's been really effective. When it comes to restaurants, like, there are like foodie capitals of the world. Like, Tokyo has claimed for a long time they're the foodie capital of the world. Paris has claimed they're the food capital of the world. San Francisco has claimed they're the food capital of America. I don't know if I buy any of those, but it doesn't really matter. If you want to lean into marketing, the place you do business more than the business you do, you can actually create something really effective. And that's true in the online world too. It doesn't matter. It's not just about one location. It comes down to your origin story. Like, I'll give you a quick example. Like, I don't know if deep dish pizza in Chicago tastes better than deep dish pizza that I buy in Boca Raton, Florida. But I know that if the brand came from Chicago, grew up in Chicago, and I believe and trust their story, then I will believe that the pizza I'm getting at the place that came from Chicago is better than deep dish that's just some guy who moved from Chicago and now is creating it here. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's a really deep attachment to a place, and you can actually add a lot of value to your brand by helping me understand where it came from. Barbecue in Texas, I believe, is better than barbecue anywhere else in the world. And I don't know if that's because it's made in barbecue in Texas, but like, having a real attachment to the place for your brand and where it came from can affect the revenue you generate. You can charge more for a pen that was made in Detroit than a pen that was bought in China or made in San Francisco or made in Dallas. And that's been proven over and over again. People will pay 3 times as much for the same pen. So I think attaching your brand to the place it came from is unbelievably powerful.
Yeah, especially if there's a story behind it, right?
It has
And
to
I
be
know
a great
you,
story.
Detroit had done some advertising. They're like, "Hey, we do manufacturing." They used to be
Yes.
cars, and now it's like we do it all. Like, we're
Yeah.
we're we're the place to manufacture stuff, right? And so they're doing a good job with that. And the power of place. I'm thinking about, like, let's say I'm a restaurant. I thought you were going to pull up a Stanley there for a second. That's what they look like.
No, this is like a knockoff version of Stanley, because I'm not paying $80 just for a gray
I don't blame
40-ounce mug.
I just let my wife buy it with her money, and then I jack it and use it. But
That's
they're very good company. They're not paying us a dime for this episode,
that's
though.
right. No.
Free ad. But I guess my point would be that place matters. We all know that. Location, location, location.
Yeah.
All that stuff. But I guess when you think about restaurants and from a micro sense and a macro sense, right? Even, but if I'm running a chain of restaurants in Phoenix, Arizona, where I live, and there's like 10 units, right? I think I think that there's an idea of locking in a connection with the place.
Mm.
Each restaurant is probably the most powerful if you could get down to that level. But especially if you're like, hey, we produce fill in the blank and we do it the best, and it's from this location, and this location produces the best. Or even, we all know that restaurants that what's the word you use? Cluster. I think that was the word you
Cluster.
used,
Yeah.
right?
Clusters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I
We
use
all
that.
know that branding, like putting a Taco Bell and a McDonald's, and you have like we can go to that place, right?
Yeah.
So that restaurants know that. But I guess, like, how, like, I was thinking maybe there's like a big idea where it's like 15 concepts that make different types of tacos
Yep.
create, this is the taco spot in our city. right?
Yeah.
And it's like you can go there and get any type of taco you want, different types of, and it's like that. If you want tacos, that's where you go.
Yeah.
Something like that. But there's this power of place that's maybe a hard idea to pull off, or who would join in. But tell us what you think about that. Like, how can restaurants kind of share this idea around around the country, not just in one
Yeah.
city?
Okay, so let me give you an example. Uh, I don't know if is Brooklyn Bagels a chain? Do you know if Brooklyn Bagels is a chain?
If it
I
is,
don't know if
I'm
it is.
not familiar. I mean,
Well,
it probably is,
m-
but I'm
well,
not familiar
maybe
with the
maybe
history.
it's not. If we're not familiar, I'm just going to assume for this conversation, maybe it's not. But here in Florida, there are a bunch of locations of Brooklyn Bagels, right? Um, and and what I'm trying to illustrate is the story is what makes the place unique. So there in the book, I actually reveal like there's kind of four types of stories that really attach emotionally a person to a specific place. So let's start with your taco example. If you're going to say that this is the place to go for tacos, it can't just be because it's on that corner or it's a perfect location or it has a great view. Those are things I can get elsewhere. There has to be a reason that at this place the tacos actually taste better. Now you could use a myth for that, right? You could say, and maybe this is true. You could look into like Native American folklore and find out what was on that spot or what was near there. Maybe there's a creek that runs by, and that the water you use comes from that creek, and the creek itself creates the best corn tortillas you've ever had. You see what I'm saying? Like that kind of thing
Hmm.
makes a difference. Now you can take that on the road and actually create it on and in every location, and that's what Brooklyn Bagels has done here. Brooklyn Bagels imports the water they use to make their bagels from Brooklyn because they believe a Brooklyn bagel tastes better because it's the water you use. So they literally fill up like a tanker truck with Brooklyn water, I think from a hose at some guy's house, right? And then they drive it down to Florida and then they fill up a bunch of tanks in the store. And when you walk in, you see these giant tanks that are Brooklyn water, and the bagels taste better. That's the same attachment to place that I'm talking about in the book. When you build a story like that, that's what you tell other people. So when people come here and they say, I'm from the Northeast, so when people come to Florida and they say, I want a bagel for Sunday breakfast, I go, oh, let me tell you about this place, Brooklyn Bagels. They import their water. They have great bagels. Let me bring you some bagels. You see what I'm saying? The
Yeah.
story comes along with the place itself. I don't know if that would work with the taco place, but anyway, that's just me brainstorming off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I could see like the tanker truck, like the CEO doing a video and like driving down
Exactly.
with the tanker.
Exactly. Like stuck in traffic on I-95
Yeah,
going, come
yeah.
on, you guys, I got
Come
to
on, we
get
got
this
bagels we're
water.
gonna make. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and people love to be able to tell a story. It's like, well, hey, I got these bagels. Let me tell you, I'm pretty sure, and then I'm
That's
pretty
right.
sure the CEO drives the water down.
That's what people want to tell. Like,
Hmm.
that's the power of a story. And that's what I realized when I was traveling around doing Town Inc. I realized that what makes these cities and towns work is not just the claim. It's not like if you put the sign up that says we are the taco capital of America, that all of a sudden it works, right? What happens is the story that backs it up is what gets populated and retold. And then people say, wait, that's the taco capital of the world, and there's a story behind it. I want to go there to see it. As I've said a number of times, I'm such a fan of barbecue. There's a place on Route 66 in Oklahoma. I think it's in Maffa. I can't remember where, but it's called like Nowhere Barbecue. And the story is that like years ago, this was a bustling little town, and it had this amazing barbecue place that was started by a family. It's still family run. But when Route 66 was a main thoroughfare, it was like the most popular spot, and the barbecue was great. And today, there's no one left in this town except for Nowhere Barbecue. And if you want the best barbecue in Oklahoma, you're going to have to drive to go get it. And so the story becomes I drove 2.5 hours from Tulsa to Nowhere Barbecue. I had the most amazing barbecue. It looks like you're in a ghost town. So like you can take pictures. Like that place, I mean, is the barbecue great? Like, no offense to Nowhere Barbecue, I don't think it's the best barbecue ever. But when I think hey, I'm going to Oklahoma, or I'm telling someone I went to Oklahoma, and they say, oh, did you have a good time? I say, oh, I drove 2 hours to this place. Let me show you the pictures. Crazy story. Barbecue's great. Came back. That's the story I tell, right? And that's what they remember. They don't remember anything else from my Oklahoma trip. So it's the
Mhm.
story, the power of the story is what really makes it work.
It's a destination, right? You're
That's
turning
right.
your and I think, we can kind of move on in a little bit here, but Starbucks did an incredible job. Not, Starbucks doesn't pay us either, but I want to highlight. I worked for them when I was growing up in college, but they um, they had this idea of they communicated it in their training. Howard Schultz, who was the CEO at that point, he kind of was the founder, if you will.
Yep.
He wrote about it in a book, and the whole idea was this idea of third place. Like we want to be the third place. That's the word they use, right? And they wanted people, people have home, work, and they wanted to be that communal ground.
Mm.
That for those who didn't have a religious affiliation or Boy Scout troop or whatever, they
Yep.
wanted to be that place you go when you just don't want to be at work or home. And we want and now they're getting back to the roots of that. You can see that in some of the things, free refills, all that stuff. They
Yep.
want to capitalize on this idea of we want people to feel like this is a place you go. We are here for you, community, right? And it's a really it's a micro concept that they're able to distill out over 19,000 plus locations and growing, but it works, right?
It absolutely works.
And so, I mean, there's got to be little ways that people can do that, but it has to be connected to a place. And it has to be connected to authenticity and trust and a story
Yep.
and it'd be amazing if you could actually distill out a Brooklyn Bagels water idea for every Starbucks location. I don't think
Exactly.
that's probably sustainable or possible, but is there a core idea that this is what our business is about, and this is what you can expect, and why you should come more often, right?
Yeah. If I can just say one last thing about it before we change subjects. But you know what's, I think a lot of the larger brands have standardized the look and feel and experience at every place in all the right ways to create loyalty um, and consistency of experience, right? Like if I go to a McDonald's in Tokyo, I feel like it's the McDonald's from Manhattan. Like I get that, right? But I still think there is an opportunity for making the place feel more local. And I actually have been to some major branded restaurants that have been recently redesigned where the local flavor of the place has been incorporated in all the right ways. And I honestly think it makes a big difference. I feel differently about the experience I'm having, even though the food is consistently the same, the service is consistently the same. Those are the reasons I chose the restaurant. But at the end of the day, sitting down to eat there feels different. And I think the more we can do that, use the brands we've built as an expression of the place they are, I think you'll gain more people feeling like it's a part of their community instead of just another cluster of restaurants that found a great location.
Mhm. That's great. It's a good way to end it, and I thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to AI real quick. I know
Yes.
we have sometimes constraints here, but I really would love to just kind of go through some points here with you. What excites you the most about AI and its potential impact on marketing, on the restaurant industry?
Yeah. Well, that's pretty simple. Like I was teasing at the beginning that there's one thing that separates AI from everything else that's ever come before it, and it's not its ability to like retrieve information. You know, Google's been doing that for 20 years. It's not its ability to write text and understand text. Natural language processing has been around for about 75 years as a concept. We have access to it now, but it wasn't publicly. You couldn't just go to ChatGPT and type a question in. So that's changed, but the concept hasn't changed. Sentiment analysis, text classification, translation, all of these things have been around for a long time as tools available to us in some way, shape, or form. But here's the one thing that is unique about AI. AI's true superpower is its ability to kind of mimic and imitate very, very quickly. It can mimic your writing style, your tone, your voice. It can mimic a video in an instant. It can mimic a songwriting style, a genre of a book. It can even act like it's a customer and mimic a customer interaction. This mimicry and imitation is what sets it apart. So when I think about what am I excited about, I'm excited about AI's ability to mimic and imitate the way I do business, the way you do business, the way your brand does business in a really detailed and methodical way, and be able to adapt very, very quickly to new information and new things that should mimic and imitate. So that's what I'm excited about. That's kind of the big idea.
Well, it's an example of how, and not that mimicry is kind of a weird word, but like the mimicking aspect. That what would it? How would that distill out to something we would see as a consumer?
Okay, so I'll give you an example as if you're using it for your business as someone in the restaurant industry. So if you're sitting down and you're saying, oh, I want to come up with a new menu for a new concept, and you just went to ChatGPT right now, you would say like, hey, I'm starting a new restaurant. I'm thinking about a new concept. Here's the new concept. Help me brainstorm some menu ideas. And it's going to spit out the most generic version of a menu you would ever see. And a lot of people give up at this point. They're like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, that's been done. Like that's lame, right? That's the generative AI is basically generic AI. It's like you're not getting anything out of it. Its ability to mimic and imitate only happens when you're willing to kind of give it more of you. So you have to share with it, what is your vision for what a great restaurant is? Why is a menu great? And you have to, this takes some thinking on your own, but you also have to tell it like, hey, forget about a new restaurant concept. Show me a menu for a restaurant and let me tell you what I don't like about it, and let me tell you what I like about it, and then you distill for me what I like about a good menu. That's amazing because it's mimicking and imitating the way you think. If you do that for just 15 minutes, I guarantee it, then you say, okay, now you've learned what I like about a great menu. I want to give you a new concept and I want you to create a menu given what you know about me. You'll all of a sudden see that it's unbelievably accurate. It starts to be really close to the kinds of things you were thinking. It's very scary, but it's so powerful. Like, I really think it's very cool. You're building like a creative collaborator, a strategic collaborator that knows how you think. And I think in the future, I know we talk a lot about leadership on this podcast. And I think in the future, as leaders, we're going to be hiring people not just for the skills they have, but for the AI they've trained to do things the way they do. So you'll come along to a new job as a marketing person for a big brand or a small restaurant chain or a franchise owner, and you'll bring with you a bunch of AI that you've trained to think about marketing the way you do and do it the way you do.
That's yeah, because then you have this thing that you know how to access in a special way because you know the prompting. It knows how you prompt. And I've been working with ChatGPT and some others, Grok and all that, the last few couple of years, mainly ChatGPT. But it's been amazing that like I put something in there for my family, and all of a sudden it starts calling me Ellie because my daughter's name, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm not Ellie. And so sometimes I'm incredibly fascinated by how it pulls stuff out and it remembers it, and but also how it also took me like 5 times to correct it before I finally
Yeah.
realized, okay, it's not Ellie. So it's still growing, but yeah, I do agree. And also there's something else in that equation too. It's the person's ability to prompt it correctly. It's not a genie, right? You have to
Yeah.
learn how to give it the prompt, and then you're like, well, that didn't work. Okay, how about we try it this way? And you actually are
Yeah.
educating yourself on how. Someday there will be a college class on how to prompt.
Well,
You and I can probably teach that class better than most people right now because we're using it
but
all day, every day. But
that's
that's
true.
that's a skill, right?
Well, if I let me give you something to think about, because I think we can fix that problem right now, actually.
Mm.
Both the Ellie problem and the prompt problem. So here's the thing about mimicry and imitation. What's really amazing is I think right now we're using ChatGPT the way we use search. So we're kind of,
Mm.
because we're formed around 25 years of using Google and Yahoo and in the old days Lycos and all those other Ask Jeeves, we
Yes,
think
geez. Yeah.
if you're using Google, you just type in the question and it gives you the answer. And so when we came to ChatGPT, or you go to Claude, or you try Grok, what you do is you walk in and you think it's just like search. Your brain is like, oh, just type something in and it'll spit out what you want. We treat it like a vending machine. And the truth is, it's very different. So the first thing you have to do is say, wait a second, anytime you're trying to use it the way we use search, you got to just stop yourself. Because it's not about the prompt at all, I think. What's really amazing is if you say, wait a second, I need to carve off a squirrel-sized task, because right now the brain size of these large language models is very small. It's only the size of a squirrel. So when you say, hey, I need you to put together a strategic plan for a restaurant that makes $1 million a week, and you try to write this long prompt, it spits out just junk, really. What you want it to do is take a small piece of that. Even if it was a marketing task, let's break down a simple one, right? Like if you're going to write an email, a marketing email, if you say, hey, write me a marketing email, it's going to be crap. If you say, I need a marketing email, a subject line, and a TikTok post, it's even worse, because that squirrel-sized brain can't handle all of that. What you have to do instead is say, hey, look, I need you first to outline what a great email from us looks like. And I'm going to give you 5 of our most successful emails, and I want you to evaluate those and tell me what you're learning as you evaluate them. And all of a sudden, within 5 minutes, I guarantee it, all of a sudden, if you say, now, here's what I want to write an email about, it will spit out something that is 80% there. It'll be a B instead of an F, right? And if you spend a few more minutes just refining what it understands, then you'll actually get something really good, probably an A- out of it, and maybe it just needs a few little tweaks. And here's the key. At that point, you need to rename that chat. So like if you're in ChatGPT, there's that little sidebar where you have all these chats that run now. Rename it as like email writer, okay? And anytime you want to write an email, you got to go back to that chat, because it'll remember everything it's learned so far, and it'll write just the email. And then you can write it. You can do a separate one for subject lines. Here's all the data from all our emails. Here are the subject lines and the open rates. Tell me which subject lines are the best, and then try to understand why are they good. How do I write subject lines that work? And then I'm going to give you an email, and you tell me what subject line. So these are little doppelgangers, I call them. These are little people, like virtual people, that think and act the way you do, and they mimic and imitate a very specific moment. Yeah. Sorry, I think we're over our time. I apologize. I got
that's all right. This is amazing, and I just to put a point on it too. I think like what you were saying and kind of leaping to is it's only as good as what you give it.
That's right.
Right. And like I was thinking when we were talking earlier about how can a brand use this? It's like, well, you're trying to decide on a menu item. You're trying to decide on a strategy or direction or whatever, fill in the blank. It's like, go get as much data as your organization has about that subject, even if it's like weather data or,
that's right.
And there's really no limit to what you can throw at it. Like what this, traffic flow,
absolutely.
How many people came in? What was the average ticket? Complaints, surveys, like you could throw a whole bunch of stuff at it and say, I'm trying to do this. Here's a mountain of data. And here's what this is. Here's what this is. Here's what this is. Tell me, and here's some consumer feedback, and here's some Yelp reviews, and this, and then put it all in there and say, go through all this. I'm not in a hurry. And tell me, what do you think is the most popular menu item or something like that, right?
That's right.
Where then in a minute, you what would take you days, weeks, a team, you can then have a tool that's just filtering through and going, well, it might be one of these 5 things.
That's right.
It probably will be in one of those 5 things.
That's right.
And that's what's so powerful, I think, about it. But you definitely unlocked for me I just thought they were a history. I didn't really even know that those were like mini brains that I'm creating. So that's a big unlock. So
that's right.
Like in your ChatGPT, you're creating mini brains. They're not just a history.
That's right. Win. They're the most powerful thing you'll ever uncover. And it's changed my life. Like I use it for personal stuff. I use it for professional stuff. I use it for coaching, for mentoring, for medical problems. Like, Drudini is my digital doppelganger's name. He knows a lot about my life. And this stuff makes people nervous. I get it. So you have to you have to be comfortable with what you're sharing with it. And we should, last, just a big disclaimer is, you should, if you're using this for corporate use, you need to be really careful what you're allowed to share with it. So you need to ask about that. Don't just update, upload all your last
That's a
5 years
smart play.
of consumer reviews. You may not be able to do that, and people may not want you to do that, or maybe you have an internal AI you can use to do that. So just be really careful what you share with it,
That's
and
really
also
smart.
be careful how you use it. Yeah.
That's really smart. Yeah, and especially if you're a publicly traded company,
Yeah,
they probably
absolutely.
are already like, listen. And
You're
then
gonna get that.
DeepSeek came out, and that's been a big like, well, we really want China to know all of
Yeah,
our numbers,
exactly.
So
That's right.
uh, so
Yeah.
I
So
hear your
be
point. There's
careful.
a
Be
big
careful.
cautionary tale there,
That's
and
right.
I think the thing about it is, and I have two more questions for you. I know we're kind of over, but
That's
I'm not
okay.
in a hurry, but I don't want to
No,
keep
no, I'm
you.
good.
But I mean, kind of the big other rock besides safety, security, managing your data appropriately, not putting things out into the ether that, just like the web, we know the web will keep it forever. And so
Yeah.
careful what party photos you take. But bigger than that, like, how do we balance the AI potential and all this limitless, oh, it's going to do everything for us, with
Yeah.
that human aspect? Because that trust factor, right? If
Yeah.
we go too hard into that, people start going, that's an AI email. I can
I
feel it.
see it already. Yeah.
How do we
Yeah.
balance that meter?
I think this is a big point for me. This is what I've hung my hat on. I think we have to be transparent about our use of AI from the
Mm,
get-go. And so
mm,
transparency is the only way to build trust. And I think we should start internally. For example, I have a shorthand way of talking about whether something was generated by AI or not. I just say, Drew Dini helped me create this. And people
okay.
know immediately it's not, I didn't just ask generic ChatGPT. I've trained some AI that thinks like me, and that AI, Drew Dini, has created what
Mm,
you're looking at right now. So it feels special and unique and different. By the way, I have an email address for Drew Dini. He gets hundreds of emails every week from people with questions about AI. And it says at the bottom, this is written by Drew Dini. He's Andrew's, AI digital doppelganger. Like, Andrew never saw this. Like, Andrew's not responsible for it. But if I email someone and I used AI to generate the email or help me generate it, it says at the bottom, like, this is from Andrew. He read it. He even edited it, but the initial draft was created by Drew Dini. So people now have some context for, and then if I write it on my own, there's no disclaimer, right? I don't need to. I wrote this whole thing. So I think we need to do that even internally. If you're working on something and you're brainstorming ideas for the next, big ad campaign for your brand, and you go to the meeting for a brainstorm meeting, if you walk in there and you're not honest about the fact that you actually spent time working with an AI partner to do this,
mm,
with a creative collaborator, I think you're already destroying trust internally with the people you
interesting.
work with. 75% of American workers are using ChatGPT for work, but they're not telling their bosses or their coworkers. 75%.
Mm,
So we know they're using it. We need to be
yeah.
open and transparent about it. And then I think it trickles down. Like, if you're using AI to write consumer, reviews or feedback to consumer reviews, instead of acting like it's a human, we are literally months away from a giant consumer disaster where people are convinced to buy or do something by AI that was pushed by a brand. If you're not
Mm,
transparent about the fact that it's AI from the get-go, I think you're destroying trust immediately. So we've got a finite
mm,
period, and it's running out fast, where we need to decide that we are going to be transparent about our use of AI, because that is the only way to build trust. One last thing. I was on LinkedIn this morning, and somebody had written, a post, and the first comment was, totally written by AI, like, right? Like, and
yeah.
what I felt bad about was the person, the person who commented after was like, I'm really embarrassed. I did use AI to, like, create the first draft, but then I did edit it. And so, like, they're already on their back feet. But if you had
Yeah.
said, hey, I was thinking about this topic and I just dumped this into AI and it wrote this post, I'll still read the post and I'll have respect for you because you were willing to at least share that, right? Uh, I think we just need to realize that the consumer is way ahead of us already. They are skeptical now that
Yeah.
lots of stuff is created by AI, and we have got to be transparent about it if you want to continue to earn trust.
That's a great closing point. And forgive me if I missed it, but I don't think we fully closed out on what do you think is this pivotal moment that you think is coming that
I,
everything is going to blossom and become, or what do you
Well,
think?
I think what we're moving towards is a time when the AI doesn't just mimic and imitate your style or voice or your tone or your what you think and what you write or create, but it will actually be able to act on our behalf. So,
Mm,
I think 5 years from now, it's totally possible that if you're in like procurement for your brand, that you will have trained an AI to think and act like you so well that when you get like a proposal from a vendor for something, that your AI, your digital doppelganger, will be able to actually read the proposals, negotiate with each vendor, maybe even against each vendor, make a decision on which vendor is the best, not just given price, but all the other things you as your person would consider, and even sign the agreement. And I know that sounds really scary, but I think it opens up, it kind of returns us to an era where all the things we got into this business to do become the fun things. Like for me, I'm no longer spending my time doing the tasks that used to annoy me. I'm spending time working with Drudini to come up with new creative ideas. And that's why I got into marketing. I didn't get into marketing to push marketing automation buttons and build an automation sequence and segment
mhm.
customers. Like that stuff is lame. I got into it because I wanted to come up with fun, creative ideas and execute them and see if they worked and had an impact on a
Mm,
business. So I think we're getting back to a renaissance where your creativity, your approach, your brain is the asset that people want access to, and your digital doppelganger can help you deal with the other stuff, but do it the way you do it.
and your ability to build those models, to build the
That's right.
tolerances of
Yeah.
acceptable, like, hey, you're allowed to do this, but you can't sign it.
Yeah.
You're allowed to
That's right.
propose it, but I need to look at it first. And that's really like when you have employees. I mean, if you're a CEO of a major company, you're sitting on a stack of SOP,
That's
you
right.
know, that you may not even understand. You're hundreds of years of somebody typing, "This is how we do it," right? Which is also why, but and that's another interesting thing that AI can help us do is help me understand what we're doing in our organizations.
Exactly.
And like I want you to go through it with this lens and find all these words or whatever, but you have to think through it creatively to say, this is how we unlock that. If I was going to spend 2 weeks doing this, what would I do? Right. And
That's
then
right.
build from there.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
It's incredible, but it's also scary. But yeah, I know it's coming. I know, what's his name? The guy from Jensen from NVIDIA, he was
Yeah.
talking about how someday you're gonna have a robot and have glasses and have, digital assistant and it goes with you like Jarvis
Yep.
and Iron Man, and and that future's coming where it's actually talking to you. Do you want me
Oh
to
yeah.
take this and do that with it? Yes, go for it. Let's talk.
Well,
That's
even Drudini can even already do that with some of my stuff on a very small scale. So like, I don't think it'll be a giant leap. I think by the time we
yeah.
get to the point at which your digital doppelganger can do stuff for you, it'll feel very natural. But you're right. Like there's a lot of little stair steps in there to get to that point. But I don't think we're as far away as everyone thinks. Drudini thinks that 2030 is like the year we'll start to really
Inflection.
see a difference. Yeah.
Well, and it's just like you said, we all have to stop using it like chat. And then we got to learn a little more. And we got a
That's
little
right.
bit more. And then all of a sudden we
Exactly.
level up with it and it levels up with us.
That's
And
right.
hopefully it doesn't go Terminator on us.
Exactly.
we'll,
That's what
we'll
we're all
assume it won't.
concerned about. No,
I know, right?
I mean, I'm bullish about it, but I am nervous. Like there is a lot of stuff that we need to figure out.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Final point. What would you like to the restaurant industry? What advice do you have just
Oh my
in
gosh.
terms of AI or whatever? What would you say
I
to
think
one
in
final word for them?
general, my advice, well, if it's AI specific, I would say that my main point is you've got to encourage transparent use of AI starting within your organization today. You have to make it okay for everybody to use AI, and it starts with you. So those leaders that are listening to this podcast right now, I think you need to be upfront about when you're using it. If you're not using it, you need to be experimenting with it, and you need to tell people you're trying it and what you're trying. And if you get any information that you're using in a meeting or you're going to talk about with other people, you need to tell them you worked with AI to get to this point. And that will transform everything. I think you're putting your organization well ahead of 99% of the organizations that are out there, and you're set up for success. Even if you don't have AI policies yet, people are doing it. So you need to make it okay.
Well, Drew, this has been such a pleasure. What an honor to be with you. I mean, I've learned so much from you over the years, and more than you probably know. And I'm grateful for what you do, and grateful for the time this morning. This conversation's been memorable, to say the least. And I'm grateful for what you taught me today and what we were able to learn from you. Thanks for your time, and hope you have a safe trip to SFO.
Thanks. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much.
All right. This is the Prosper Brief.